Hi all, welcome to my channel Semper Astra. My name is Maggie and in today's video I would love to share with you my reflections on the process of learning orientation and mobility skills, and also on traveling independently and walking about independently as a blind person. This year, it is exactly 30 years since I lost my sight. It is also exactly 30 years since I have started learning orientation and mobility skills. And it is also 30 years since I started walking as a totally blind person independently. And I have to admit that big anniversaries like that always inspire me to reflect on many different aspects of my life and always inspire me to share my experiences and my reflections with others. And at the beginning of this video, I want to emphasize that the topic of orientation and mobility, and also the topic of being able to walk independently as a blind person, is probably one of the most important topics for me. And this is because I strongly believe that it is thanks to the fact that I have good skills in orientation and mobility, and that walking independently as a blind person is definitely my strength. Thanks to these things, I have managed so far to achieve great majority of my goals and of my dreams and of my plans. And I wish the same to everyone who is learning orientation and mobility and who is walking independently as a blind person. I wish you wholeheartedly that orientation and mobility and being independent when walking is your strength, and that this is your way to success and to well-being, and that these areas are not difficulties for you and they are not obstacles for you. The first point that I would like to discuss in this video today is attitude that helps to start learning orientation and mobility, and attitude that helps to start walking independently as a blind person. I will divide this point into two sub-points. In the first sub-point, I will talk about situation of people who have problems with the eyes, who suffer from illnesses related to the eyes, and who know that they may lose sight in the future. And in the second sub-point, I will discuss general population and situation of people who lose their sight unexpectedly out of the blue. For the context of this video, I want to clarify that I was born with low vision, and it was both in terms of acuity and visual field, and I totally lost my sight when I was 15. It is also important to clarify that for the first 15 years of my life, my sight was good enough that I was able to walk on my own independently using my vision. I was able to run, ride a bike, and I was very confident at this task. I was comfortable doing it. I was also playing football, basketball. Basically, my poor side, my low vision, were not an obstacle and was not a limitation in terms of orientation and mobility. And when I lost my sight at the age of 15, I lost my vision suddenly and completely. So this need of starting to learn orientation and mobility and the need of starting to walk independently without a vision appeared suddenly, and although I knew that it may happen, it was still kind of like a shock to the system, I have to say. Now, I believe personally, now I'm talking about the first sub-point, which is about situation of people who suffer from eye conditions and who know that they may lose their vision. So for me as a child who had low vision, who suffered from glaucoma and cataracts, the most helpful thing was to meet blind adults, and I had an opportunity to meet blind adults at special summer camps organized for children with visual impairment. And these summer camps were organized by the Polish equivalent of Royal National Institute of the Blind. And they were like 2-week camps when we were going away and we were staying at the campsite and we were doing various activities together. And during these camps, I met two types, I could say, of totally blind adults. First of all, I met blind adults who were using white cane, and I also met some adults who never used white cane. And at this point, I just want to say that please keep in mind that I am talking here about my own memories, about my own perceptions, about my own thoughts, about my own beliefs, about my own memories, about my own emotions. Everybody has different experiences, everybody has different opinions. I respect everybody's opinion, but for the purpose of this video, I want to share my memories, my thoughts, my perceptions to make this video authentic. But if I hurt somebody's feelings, I just want to apologize for this. But I want to share this reality as the way I remember it to make it authentic. So I just wanted to make this disclaimer. So I clearly remember that I always was very, very impressed with blind adults who were using the cane. I was always very impressed with how independent they are, with how they were able to achieve whatever they were needed to achieve. I was very impressed of how purposeful they were. Do you know what I mean? They did everything they wanted to do and they achieved everything they wanted to achieve. And I also really admired how much autonomy they had as well. And, you know, I was very, very impressed that this simple tool, because white cane is a simple tool, I was very impressed that this simple tool, white cane, gives them so much freedom, so much independence, so much agency. And what is more, I always perceived blind people who were using white cane as I was always viewing their posture, their body posture, as very elegant, as very gracious, as very kind of put together. I also viewed them, and I always believed that they are moving in a very purposeful way, in a very kind of gracious way, in a very elegant way, and they just look cool to me, you know. And they were like wow to me. Basically, they were cool, and they always looked like independent, purposeful, autonomous adults who could make amazing use out of the simple tool, which is the white cane. And in opposition to these people, I always perceived blind adults who never used the cane as kind of passive, as very dependent, as, I'm sorry to say this word, but very kind of clumsy. And I always felt that they are making many like chaotic moves. And I also always believed that they basically look awkward. And as soon as I lost my sight, I didn't even have a 1 second of hesitation. I wanted to be like these blind people who were using cane. I wanted to be that cool. I wanted to be so autonomous. I wanted to be so independent. And I wanted to look elegant. I wanted to look purposeful. I wanted to look gracious. Do you know what I mean? And these positive role models that these blind adults were to me really, really helped me. And I am very grateful for this. Also, I want to share here a very important point. So very often I hear from other blind people till this very day that they don't want to use white cane because they don't want to look different, and they don't want to look disabled, and they don't want to look blind. And from my memories as a low vision child, I believe that no matter whether blind person uses white cane or not, the person always looks different, okay? And the person in the end always looks somehow awkward or disabled. But in my opinion, this looking different is more awkward, and I'm sorry to use this word, but more negative than just using white cane. And I will share with you several situations where, as a child who had low vision, I met a blind person who didn't have a cane with them. And I remember that I didn't realize initially that they are blind, but straight away I felt that there is something different about them. Straight away I felt that there is something awkward about them. And I was like, oh wow, what is wrong with this person, if that makes sense, right? And when I lost my vision, I didn't want to look this awkward. I didn't want people to guess, oh, what's wrong with her? I wanted people to see straight away that I am blind, end of story. There is nothing else there. Do you know what I mean? And there are particular situations where I thought about this, and I will give you examples of these situations. So I clearly remember that as soon as I lost my vision, and when I was meeting new people, I always wanted to have a white cane with me because I wanted these new people to see, okay, Maggie is blind, so this is why she doesn't know that I am trying to shake her hand, right? So I didn't want to meet anybody without white cane, because I didn't want this new person to think, oh, why is Maggie not shaking my hand? Why is she so awkward? So I wanted to be just perceived as blind, and that's it, not as awkward, or you know what I mean, people guessing like what else is wrong with me, okay? The similar situation I recall with going to the local shop. Soon after I lost my vision, I probably was going for an ice cream or something, and I remember that I wanted to have a white cane with me, because when I was paying, I knew where to put money on the counter, but then I didn't know where to reach for change. And again, I wanted the person in the shop to know that I'm blind, and that it will be helpful to me when they hand me back change to my hand, rather than thinking, oh, what is wrong with her? Why is she not reaching for this change, right? So I wanted this transparency that cane gives. And I wanted to be perceived as blind and basically, blind and basically coping, maybe no, let's forget the word coping. I actually don't like this word coping, but you know what I mean. Using the cane in a good way, in a purposeful way, and being able to move about with its help. So this is the end of this sub point, and I believe that having positive role models and having your own reflections and kind of making your choices based on positive role models is really, really helpful, and seeing what the cane can give you, right? Now I'm moving to the second sub point, which will be more about general population, but naturally all of the topics discussed here will also relate to people who know that they may lose sight. So first thing that I want to share here is the attitude. So I believe that, and now I will say this from the perspective of being CBT therapist, that one thing that is definitely unhelpful is trying to anticipate what may go wrong in life and trying to be prepared for all of the eventualities in life. It is very unhelpful, this approach, because it is burning our energy, it is taking away our happiness today, but it is not resolving our future problems. We are simply unable to predict what will happen, when this will happen, how it will happen. We are absolutely unable to predict what may be useful in the future, and we are basically totally unable to prepare for future situations and for future problems. And this is why it is good to kind of walk away as much as we can from this approach. However, it is helpful to be ready and open to address the situations that we find ourselves in. So to address the situations that already occurred, okay? And to be proactive when the situation is already occurring, and then it is good to problem solve. And the first type of attitude that may be very, very helpful is being open to experiences and to suggestions, and to reach out for help, to listen and to learn from professionals, to take to account their suggestions, to experiment with different strategies that may be helpful, to try many different strategies before we choose the best one for us. And naturally, it is important that we make our decisions ourselves, but it is very helpful to listen, to learn, to listen to other people's experiences, and to kind of be open to ideas that are shared with us. Second of all, I think that it is very helpful to, and now I am talking about this from my own private perspective, to focus on practicalities. And I will go even one more step further, to view situations and things not as obstacles but as opportunities. And now I will kind of expand on this thought. So luckily for me, and I cannot even exactly remember how I gained this attitude, but ever since I remember, I had very practical approach to life and to difficulties. And I remember that I always was reflecting on this phrase which exists in English and in Polish, and Polish is my mother tongue, and the phrase is that somebody is wheelchair bound. And I was thinking, oh wow, so this phrase suggests that the wheelchair is kind of like a prison, that wheelchair is a limitation. And I was thinking, even as a small child, when I didn't need accommodations myself, I was thinking, it's a shame that people say this, because actually the wheelchair gives this or that person freedom. Thanks to the wheelchair, this or that person is not in bed, they are not at home, they are in the park, they are in the restaurant, they are at work, they are on a bus. So thanks to the wheelchair, they go wherever they want to go or wherever they need to go. And I think that when I lost my sight, my process of thinking was very kind of simple. I was thinking, okay, I cannot use my eyes anymore to walk about. So what is the tool that will enable me to walk independently? And that tool at that time was the cane. And luckily for me, I never viewed the cane, white cane, as a label. I never treated white cane as a symbol of blindness, as a symbol of disability. Cane was my tool to freedom. Cane was my tool to independence. And I'm very, very grateful for this attitude. And I strongly, strongly recommend viewing AIDS not as a symbol of disability or weakness, but, as I said, tools to freedom. And I also mentioned at some point in this kind of in this part of this video that I don't particularly like the word cope. I don't like this word because cope is kind of like minimum, and I wish that everybody lives their life to the full and not just cope. Of course it is important that we cope, but I wish you all the best. I wish that you live your life to the full, and coping is kind of one stage of this, but then I would like you to all realize your dreams and your plans and be happy in daily life and also on a big scale. Okay, so now I will move to point 2. And I already mentioned this point in other videos, but I will be forever repeating it because this point is very important to me on private level, but also on like general level. And this point is all about receiving support and help as soon as you need it, as soon as you lose your sight. So for the context, the surgery that determined that I will never get my sight back took place few weeks before the end of the school year. And for me, it was the last year of primary school. And also for the context, I just want to remind that I was going to primary school to mainstream school. It was a local school, and I was going to school with other sighted children, and the school didn't have any accommodations then, and I, to be fair, didn't need too many accommodations then. But because I lost my sight suddenly and completely, I continued my education in high school for the blind, and the school is called Lasky School for the Blind, and it is located by capital city of Poland, Warsaw, which in Poland we say Warszawa, and the school is called Lasky School. And very, very lucky for me, the former head mistress of this school didn't wait to start kind of offering me education till the beginning of the school year, and she invited me to the school during the first week of summer holiday, and she organized for me braille lessons and also orientation and mobility lessons. And I am very grateful for this help till this day, because it was life-saving in many different ways. First of all, it was very helpful on emotional level, and thanks to the fact that I received this help as soon as it was technically possible, I was never left in the limbo. I was never left without help. So pretty much as soon as I stopped being able to walk with the help of my vision, as soon as I healed from the surgery, I went to Lasky School for the Blind, and I was given my first white cane. And in that week, I was taught very basic techniques of using white cane and of walking with this white cane. And thanks to that, I never was without a technique, right? Because as soon as I lost my sight and as soon as I lost ability to walk with the use of my sight, I was given basic skills in orientation and mobility. And naturally, at this point, in this first week, I was taught very, 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 very basic skills. But we need to keep in mind that I was a child there, okay? And these basic skills were enough for me for this moment in life. After this week, I was able to take the rubbish out, in the block of flats where I lived with my family. I was able to go to the local shop. I was able to walk around my grandparents' house and a garden. And that was enough for me as a child transitioning from primary school to high school. In 30 years ago, I don't recall my peers traveling all over town. Do you know what I mean? So I was basically, what I'm saying is that the skills that I was giving in this first week, in that week of first week of the summer holidays, gave me enough independence that I felt secure, I felt safe, I never felt scared, I never felt helpless, I never felt hopeless, because also, thanks to that basic skills, I understood what is possible for me as a blind person, and I knew that I will gain further skills. So the hope was instilled in me. And until this very day, I feel very, very emotional when I think to myself that, in all honesty, I don't recall even one situation where I wanted to go somewhere and I couldn't because there was nobody to guide me there. And I don't recall even one situation where I wanted to go somewhere and I had to wait for somebody to be guided there. Even in this very first week when I was staying at the Lasky school, even after the initial sessions, I was already able to go outside of the dormitory where I lived, and I was able to find a bench and to enjoy sitting on this bench and enjoy beautiful June evening, right? And as soon as I started school in September, I was already able to walk from the dormitory to school and back. And I never had to wait for anybody. I was independent enough to find these basic routes myself. And also there is a practical benefit of this, and the practical benefit of this support that I received straight away after losing sight is that I'm told that I never developed bad habits. And I'm told this particularly often during my guide dog trainings. And I hear that it is very positive, for example, that I don't make these chaotic movements of my hands, that I'm not looking for things chaotically around me. And all of my movements are very purposeful, very delicate, very kind of neat, if that makes sense. And I strongly believe that I never developed bad habits because straight away I was taught good habits. So I strongly recommend reaching out for help as soon as you lose your sight, as soon as you need it. Don't wait, because that will give you a lot of benefits. But I also understand that I am privileged that I had this support straight away. And as I said, I am very grateful for this. The next point that I want to discuss is the fact that I strongly believe that orientation and mobility and ability to walk independently as a blind person are my strength, thanks to the fact that I received a lot of orientation and mobility lessons. And I received these lessons for a long periods of time and at many different stages of my life. So, for example, my education at Lasky School for the Blind lasted 4 years, and for entirety of these 4 years, every Friday afternoon I had mobility lessons, more or less from 1 p.m. to more or less 6 p.m. So you can imagine how many hours that was, how consistent these lessons were, and how many opportunities I had to learn. And what is more, I also received support when I was moving to my university town, and I received mobility lessons then. And then I also was very lucky to receive very good trainings with all of my guide dogs and a lot of support from all of my guide dog school. My first guide dog was I received my first guide dog from American School Guiding Eyes for the Blind. And after finishing my training, I went back to Poland. And although I lived thousands of miles away from the school, I always could count on this school. I always could count on Guiding Eyes for the Blind. And whenever I needed them, they consulted with me over the phone, and they were also flying out to Poland to support me, right? Isn't that great? And now I live in the UK, and I'm very privileged that I receive a lot of support, continuous support from British Guide Dog School. And I'm very, very grateful for this. And I encourage everyone to reach for help for as long as you need it and whenever you need it. And also, if for whatever reason you believe that you're not benefiting from your mobility and orientation, talk about this. And it is important to be open and honest and resolve the problems and ensure that the lessons are beneficial. The next point that I will discuss, I will dare to say that is probably the most important one here, okay? And this point is all about the fact that as soon as I gained a skill, I always implemented this skill in my daily life. So let's go back to this first week when I went to Lasky School for the Blind for the first week of the summer after I lost my vision. And from the day when I received my first white cane, I can say with absolute certainty that I never left the house without the cane ever since. I always took cane with me. And as soon as I learned a skill, a technique, I was implementing it straight away. And I very quickly proved to myself that I feel more confident with the cane, that I have more agency, that I am safer, that I am faster, that I am more competent, and that also I feel more comfortable. And what is also very important is that this helped me to progress to, you could say, next level of being able to use cane. And for the first year, I was only walking around the school grounds and also around the neighborhood where my parents lived. But already in year 2 of my high school, I was able to go to Warszawa city on my own. And I remember that I was able to travel to hospital, children's hospital on my own, which was on the other side of capital city of Poland. That was like a 2-hour journey on the bus, and I was changing 3 buses, okay? And I was able to do it when I was 16. And you see, as soon as I was able to go to town, my parents and my tutors and my teachers encouraged me to do this and gave me permission to do this as well. And in the 3rd year of my high school, I was already able to go back to where my parents live, which is totally different part of Poland. And I was going on the train independently. And in summary, we could say that my mobility skills grew with me. And my mobility skills grew with my needs as a growing teenager. And also thanks to the fact that I was implementing all of the skills straight away, it was never a shock to me, for example, when I had to go to university and live and travel across town, because I already did that at high school. And by the way, I just want to emphasize that it is not like, oh, woe is me, I was so great. I didn't plan for it. I didn't think about this. It just happened naturally, but it was amazing. And here I am also thinking about children that are born blind, and I think that it would be ideal for them that they would be gaining their orientation and mobility skills as they grow, and as their independence grows, as their interest grows, as their need grows, as their necessity grows, and then nothing is ever a big shock or a big jump. This progression is natural. The progression in mobility skills follow progression of life. And I'm very, very grateful to this, that everyone was brave enough to let me be independent. And that is awesome. And I also want to mention at this point that from very early on, also my family and friends who were guiding me, because of course sometimes for ease I'm just guided by somebody else. My friends and my family noticed that it is easier for them to guide me when I have the cane. So everyone always supported me in this choice of use the cane. And the next point that I want to discuss is the emotional side of orientation and mobility. So now again, I will kind of maybe reflect more on my role as a CBT therapist. And I believe that in orientation and mobility, the anxiety level plays equally big role or even bigger role than technical skills. And for example, I have to admit that I am not very, very good technically. I am very average technically. My strength definitely is that in this particular area of life, I have relatively low anxiety level. And I believe that the best way to support blind people with keeping the anxiety level on the low side is to offer support immediately as soon as people lose their sight, to offer them a lot of technical support, to encourage them to practice these skills. But if the person already has high anxiety levels, if the person didn't have an opportunity to learn straight away, if the person has not traveled on their own, has not walked on their own for a long time, and now they are anxious about this, I believe that it is very important to offer these people with high anxiety levels CBT as a part of orientation and mobility. And also, if you are a person who feels anxious about walking on your own, please do reach out for help, because CBT can help massively to reduce the anxiety level about walking independently. And walking independently is very, very anxiety provoking. I remember that initially I was very stressed about getting lost, and now I treat getting lost more as an adventure rather than as a stressful situation. And I also treat it as an opportunity to learn a new area. I also treat it as an opportunity to maybe learn new route. And also, my very good friend always jokes that whenever I tell her, oh, I'm lost, she says, you are not lost. You are on the way from point A to point B. So exactly you know where you are. You just don't know maybe where on this route from A point to B. And that always makes me laugh, because in that sense, I always know where I am, like I am on North Hemisphere. So anyway, it is kind of funny, and sometimes kind of joking about this and making this situation light also helps a lot. And I strongly encourage, again, just to summarize this point, that if people feel anxious about independently walking, traveling, CBT may help. And also, transforming fear to curiosity and like positive challenge and opportunity to learn also may help a lot. The next point that I will discuss is technology. And technology has improved massively over the last 30 years. And even preparing to this video, I was thinking that it even has improved a lot over the last 5 years. And, it was always possible for me to travel on unknown routes and in unknown areas. But technology truly opened up the world for blind people. And I feel that as long as I have mobile reception, I will be fine. And I believe that it is important to introduce the use of the sat navs and also the use of Be My Eyes and Aira as early as you can in your journey of learning mobility skills. Because first of all, that probably will reduce anxiety, that will give confidence, that will help in these tricky situations when we are lost. That will give more opportunities to travel more routes with ease and with no stress. But the main thing that we have to remember is that SatNavs, Aira, and Be My Eyes are just additional tools. And at this point, in July 2026, they are not replacing guide dog and they are not replacing white cane, okay? So they are just additional helpful tools, but still cane and the guide dog are basic tools without which we're not safe, to be fair. Okay, the last point that I want to say here is that the main reason why I am so fascinated with orientation and mobility is that that you can learn and develop in this area forever. So this is 30 years since I lost my sight. This is 30 years since I walk independently as a blind person. And tomorrow I'm starting another course of orientation and mobility lessons, because in few weeks I will be moving to a new area and I want to be prepared for this move. I want to feel confident in this new area. I want to lower the stress levels linked with moving. And I also want my guide dog to have a positive experience. And moving house is not the only opportunity to reach for additional help. Sometimes I reach for additional help when I notice that I start making more and more mistakes in some area of mobility and orientation, or I get confused in one area, or I simply feel that I don't benefit from local area as much as I could, and I would like to learn more about local businesses, shops and stuff. I just would like to get to know this area more. Or I feel that I'm developing bad habits, and all of these reasons are good reasons to reach out for support and help. At this point, I also want to emphasize very, 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 very strongly that maybe you're in the situation that you didn't have opportunity to learn orientation and mobility. Maybe you live your life as a blind person, but for many, many, many years you don't walk independently. And maybe you're thinking that it is too late for learning orientation and mobility. And I just want to use this opportunity and this video today to say that it is never too late. And it is always worth trying. And even if there is only one route that you would find useful and helpful, this goal is very precious goal, and it is important that you receive help and support with achieving this goal. I also want to say that in the area of orientation and mobility, there is no objective successes and no objective goals. Everybody has a different goal. One person wants to travel around the world independently, and that's fine for them. But somebody else may just want to go to the grocery store, want to go to the local, hairdressers, or want to go to the, children's school, and that is enough. And these goals are as important as other goals. So please never give up on yourself. And it is important to try to make these first steps. And if you enjoy walking independently, maybe you will learn more and more routes, maybe you will make more and more steps. And if you don't enjoy, you can always, decide not to go ahead with it, right? But it is worth trying, and I warm-heartedly want to encourage you to try, because it may improve the quality of life and give you more confidence and independent. And it's only if it's important for you, because if it's not important for you, like, it is absolutely okay. That needs to be everybody's choice. I'm just talking about this because I don't want anybody to think that it is too late for them, or maybe that their goals are not big enough to ask for them. Okay, at the end of this video, I just want to show you two things, just as a pure, like, interesting things. So the first thing that I want to share with you is a blind Barbie. This Barbie was released to the market 2 years ago. This Barbie has in her hand a white cane, American style, so like long cane up to her nose. And also on her, she wears, like, not on her eyes, like on her head, she wears like dark glasses. And apparently her clothes has very tactile, like, pattern, so people can feel the pattern on the clothing. Also on the box there is a braille label saying Barbie. And personally, I was never a big fan of Barbie, but I'm very happy that this Barbie was introduced, because this, Barbie maybe introduced the topic of orientation and mobility, blindness, white cane to the kind of general public domain, Maybe it starts some conversations and sighted children learn about blindness and mobility that way. But also it is very nice for blind children to have representation in the world of fantasy, play and toys. So very good idea. I just hope that one day they will release a Barbie with the guide dog. And another thing that I want to share is the cane that I use when, for whatever reason, I'm not working with my guide dog. So for example, when I'm on the waiting list for my guide dog, when I was, or when it is a really hot day and I don't want my guide dog's paws to be burned. So I hold here a cane which is not white, because in the UK there is no law saying that the cane has to be white. This cane is from a company called Ambutech, and I ordered it from RNIB website, and I chose the color myself. So I always liked very vibrant colors, and this color, I have like pink section, then purple section, then pink section, pink section, blue section, pink section and purple section. And if you are worried whether public, members of public recognize it as a cane for the blind, I am happy to share that I'm using this type of cane for the last 15 years. This is not my first cane with that colors. And I was never mistaken for, this cane was never mistaken for a different type of cane. And ladies who teach me orientation and mobility always clarify to me that people recognize that this is a white cane, in inverted commas, by the way I use this cane, not necessarily by the color. So people see that I am blind by the way I use the cane, not by the color. And absolutely, I participate in orientation and mobility with that cane under the supervision of orientation and mobility instructors. Even tomorrow I will have my first lesson in my new area. And the way I like to learn this new area is that, first of all, I will walk around the area with the cane and not with the guide dog, because the lady who will teach me doesn't know the area, I don't know the area, so we are going to make like a reconnaissance, we are going to kind of find out what the area is like, and we don't want my guide dog Wilma to just like be confused. So we will walk about, I will walk with my cane, I will create like a mental map of that place, And then for the second lesson, we will, of course, take my guide dog Wilma, but I will already have understanding of this area, so I will know what to expect of Wilma, what to ask her for, and naturally, very often I go to new places with Wilma without any preparations like that. But because this will be our home, I just want this first walks there to be good experience for me and for my dog. And this way I want to build good habits and good experiences with that move for me and for Wilma. Okay, so I hope that I didn't forget anything. And if you find my videos interesting or useful, I would be very grateful if you could subscribe my channel. And if you are in the situation that you are now learning orientation and mobility, if you are starting to walk on your own independently as a blind person, I wish you all the best. I wish you a lot of courage, a lot of strength, a lot of resilience. Please also celebrate every little achievement, because it is a massive life change and massive achievement. And if you are supporting somebody on this journey, I also wish you a lot of courage, a lot of strength, and a lot of helpful and positive support from everyone around you. And thank you for watching today, and I will see you soon in my future videos. Thank you. Bye bye.